Hello, welcome to the Tainted Tavern, and today I've got another whiskey review for you, another budget whiskey review for you, because just lately I've been covering a lot of budget whiskies. I've recently done...
Come into the Tainted Tavern, come sit a while for free. We talk about our musings and devices we've been using.
I've recently done 2 reviews of Aldi's Glenmarnock whiskies, that is single malt sold through Aldi through their own brand name of Glenmarnock, which isn't a real distillery, but these are single malts sourced from elsewhere, from other distilleries, and both of the expressions I did lately, which was the Speyside and the Island, were both decent. So I wanted to continue on in the vein of reviewing budget whiskies, but I wanted to step out of the single malt sphere and bypass blended whiskies altogether and perhaps try a bourbon whiskey. And so I went to Aldi's yesterday and picked up a bottle of their bourbon, which again is marketed under their own name. It's not a real distillery, but it's sourced from somewhere in Kentucky, because it's a straight Kentucky bourbon, and that is Samuel Joe's Bourbon. The bottle label here reminds me both of Jack Daniel's Old Number 7 and Jim Beam. If this was a white label rather than a black label, it would very much resemble Jim Beam, the basic standard of Jim Beam. Now, prior to doing this review, I went on YouTube and checked a lot of whiskey reviews to see if anyone else had reviewed this whiskey, and several had. But I feel there's some brilliant whiskey review sites on YouTube, some brilliant reviewers, but there are also a lot who won't give any kudos at all to a budget blend or a budget malt or a budget bourbon because they are budget, and they don't want to appear, they want to appear that the drink is not sophisticated enough for them. That's fine. I mean, if you want to go down that route, that's fine, but because taste is subjective, of course. But I saw a particular video today, and I'm not going to name the channel, but they gave this a terrible review, which is fine. Again, as I say, taste is subjective, but they were spouting out a complete bullshit. First of all, they said this was no more than 2 years old. Now that's rubbish, because whilst in order for bourbon to be Kentucky straight bourbon, the rules are that it has to be matured in Kentucky for 2 years minimum. That's fine. So that's a fact, that's possible. But the fact that this is labeled Samuel Joe's Kentucky Straight Bourbon, we know that this is at the bare minimum 4 years of age, and I'll tell you why it's got to be 4 years of age. Because even though this is sold in the EU and the UK under all these own name, it still has to comply to the federal, that is the American laws on bourbon. So if a bourbon, Kentucky Straight Bourbon, is less than 4 years old, it must carry an age statement somewhere on the label. This has no age statement, so this is a 4-year-old bourbon. That's fact. It also said on this channel that it's got numbers etched in the bottom here, and that signifies that it's had colorings added. Again, that's bullshit. Kentucky Straight Bourbon, under strict federal rules, can have no colorings added at all. So this is a perfectly natural color, and it is a minimum of 4 years of age. It could be 5 or 6 years of age, but I doubt that very much, because if it was had that extra maturation on it, they'd likely list it on the label. But because it isn't less than 4 years old, they don't have to list that on the label. So I think, you know, that it's important that if you are doing a review, you know, you don't have to like it. You can slag it off if you want to, or you can praise it to the high heavens, but you shouldn't give false information. So, 4-year-old, guaranteed. No artificial colouring, again, guaranteed. Where does this come from? We don't know. I have searched online to try and get some hints of what whiskey is contained in here, but no one seems to know. It would all be guesswork. I tasted it earlier, just a little taste, and it wasn't unlike Jim Beam to me. But I'm going to pour a glass. Now, as always with my whiskey reviews, we're going to do this 3-way. We're going to take it in a Glencairn glass first, perfectly neat. Then we're going to add a few drops of water to break it up, and then finally I'm going to take it over the rocks, because over the rocks is the way I normally enjoy my whiskey. of an evening when I'm relaxing. So then when I'm drinking this over the rocks, the tastes that I'm getting are going to be reflective of the way I normally drink my whiskey. So let's pour a glass now. We pour a small measure into this Glencairn, and we'll also put a nice measure into the Jack Daniel's branded glass there on the rocks. Now, colour wise, it's a amber, towards the dark amber side of caramel coloured on the nose. It's very much a bourbon aroma. I drink a fair bit of bourbon, and I'm wide range of bourbons I've drunk in my time. I've drunk expensive bourbons, and I've drunk the more affordable bourbons such as the Wild Turkeys and the Buffalo Traces. I do like Buffalo Trace, I do like Wild Turkeys, especially the 101 expression. So I'm pretty familiar with what bourbon should taste like. Let's go to the legs on this. Half decent legs. Not Angela Rippon quality, but definitely probably equatable to a Spice Girl. On the nose, caramel, some burnt toffee, that familiar bourbon aroma to the palate. That's a smooth bourbon. The finish on it is aniseed on the finish. Slight burn. It's 40% ABV, so that would be 80 proof. It's listed as Samuel Joe's straight Kentucky bourbon, matured in white oak casks. So again, bourbon must be matured in brand new casks, charred casks. So this just tells us that the casks that we use were white oak, and they would have then been charred. And the ruling that bourbon can only be aged in new virgin oak means that a lot of the casks then are sold on to other whiskey producers. Scotch, for instance, Scotch producers use a lot of ex-bourbon barrels in maturation. The story of why they must be charred is there are several legends, and I mention it in my book Dark History of Whiskey. I tell the history of bourbon, in which it may have been a fire that burnt down a whiskey rickhouse where barrels were stored, and charred the barrels, and they found then that the whiskey tasted that much better, and they say the tradition comes from there, but there are several other explanations of why they use charred barrels. So it's aged in white oak. This has won awards. It's got an International Spirits Challenge Gold Award from 2024. Price wise, what did I pay for this? £15.45 for, I think it's 70 cl. Yeah, 70 cl, so that's a bargain. I mean, that's a good £5 or £6 cheaper than the basic Jim Beam. And this is without a doubt equal to the basic Jim Beam, if a little slightly more complex and maybe slightly more flavour here. There's some molasses there as well. Let's add a little bit of water to this, and not a lot, just a cupful. A couple of drops. Oops, spilled a bit there. Just a little bit of water. Welsh water, incidentally. Brecon Carrig. This water comes from the source in the Brecon Beacons, where the water is sourced to make the Penderyn Welsh whiskey. So yeah, Kentucky Reserve, Samuel Joe's straight Kentucky bourbon, matured in white oak casks. It won a Great Taste Award in 2004. It also won the International Spirits Challenge Gold in 2024. Its claims on the bottle, this is an old special blend. As I say, we don't know where this comes from. Could it be Buffalo Trace? Could it be Jim Beam? Who knows? On the back you've got the usual gump of know your limits, drink responsibly and all that, and it tells that it's bottled rather for the UK market, so it's made in the United States in Kentucky, but it's actually bottled in France. Now, just because it's sold, as I've said, on the European market, the United Kingdom market, it's got to follow the rules, the federal rules of bourbon production. For it to be a Kentucky straight bourbon, it must be aged 2 years. If it is less than 4 years of age, then it's got to carry the age statement on the label. This doesn't, so it's 4-year-old. It also can't have any artificial additives, whatever, so this is not being coloured. That colour you see in there, it comes from spending a minimum of 4 years in the barrel. So the water's done its thing now. The additional water smooths it down a bit. It was a bit angry on the palate, a little bit forceful. It's smoother now. Molasses, biscuity, the sweetness of corn, some toffee, some charcoal. Overall, you know, that's a decent enough bourbon. For the price, of course, it's spectacular because you've got to take into account the price. Let's say a bourbon that's not expensive, but a little bit more than what you would call the cheap end that I drink regularly, and that is Eagle Rare. Eagle Rare comes in over years, anywhere between 30 and 40 pounds. Is this as good as Eagle Rare? No, not to my taste. Eagle Rare is an exceptional bourbon, but then you wouldn't expect it to be for the price point. The question you should be asking yourself is, does this provide a quality drinking experience? And the answer is very much yes, it does. There is nothing wrong with this stuff. I've not tried the two big budget supermarkets over here in the UK, both German owned, and that is Aldi's, where this came from, and Lidl's. Lidl's have their own bourbon, bottled again under their own name, so similar situation. But that's called Western Gold. I've not tried that yet, so how it compares to this I don't know. And that's going to be an interesting thing that I'm going to do over the next couple of weeks. I'm going to purchase some whiskey from Lidl's. I'm going to do the Benbrachen range. I'm going to do the Highland and the Speyside. I don't need to do the Islay because I've drunk that multiple times, and I've really got good things to say about Lidl's Benbrachen Islay expression. I think it's fantastic. So I'm going to try the Highland and the Speyside and compare them to the Aldi's ones that I've recently reviewed, and I'm also going to do the Little Western Gold Bourbon and see if it stands up to this stuff. But this is okay. I mean, you know, it's not, I would say it's better than Jim Beam, the basic Jim Beam. Okay, let's try it on the rocks now, and cheekily I'm using a Jack Daniel's branded glass. Now on the rocks is the way I usually drink my bourbon, so the taste I'm going to get here, I should be able to give a better indication of my opinion of this drink, because this is how I partake in my bourbon. So, over the rocks, and let's have some suitable bourbon drinking music when I sample delights within the glass. The aroma is subdued now, but that's because the ice has cooled the drink down. It's subdued the flavours somewhat, but there's still some corn, some sweet corn, little toffee, little caramel, have some treacle. That's beautiful. That is absolutely fantastic. You know, there's a very famous American whiskey, which is not billed as bourbon, but technically it is bourbon, and that is Jack Daniel's Old Number 7. It goes through an extra process to what a usual bourbon would, through maple. I think this is as good as Jack Daniel's Old Number 7. Jack Daniel's Old Number 7 to me is too sweet. I will drink it from time to time, and I do quite enjoy it, but it's too sweet. So, given a choice between something like this and Old Number 7, I prefer this. It's got a sweetness of its own, but it's not overly sweet. I do think that is the biggest failing of Jack Daniel's Old Number 7. It's too sweet. And where I was going on about people giving the wrong information about whiskey is like the guys who said this was coloured and that it could be 2-year-old. I may have made a mistake just now talking about Jack Daniels because the process that it goes through, I believe it's maple charcoal that is filtered through that extra step and then is sold as a Tennessee whiskey, even though to all intents and purposes it's a bourbon. It's not a Kentucky straight bourbon because it wasn't made in Kentucky. It's a Tennessee whiskey, but it still legally would qualify as a bourbon. Only Jack Daniels chooses to separate it from bourbon and sell it as a Tennessee whiskey, but it is basically bourbon. Nothing wrong with bourbon, I like bourbon. So yeah, that's Samuel Joe's bourbon. Cheap, nice, tasty, definitely better than Jim Beam White Label. Up there with Jack Daniels in my opinion. Can't pick fault with this for the price. If I paid 40-50 pounds for this bottle, I'd probably say, well, it's a bit shit. It's not as nuanced as I would expect for it, you know, where I could, at the price point where I could buy something like an Eagle Rare or a Maker's Mark, or even a Wild Turkey 101. It's not up with those standards, but I haven't paid anywhere near that price. It is a good, decent sipping whiskey. There's nothing wrong with this. Samuel Joe's bourbon, highly recommended by the folks here at the Tainted Tavern. Cheers, Salanji, Yaki Da. Don't forget to come back for more reviews.